Everybody, welcome to another math video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about how we can write the equations for horizontal and vertical lines by using the standard form. So let's go ahead and let's get started. Here we have sort of the instructions on why we're allowed to write the equations of horizontal lines by using standard form. So the standard form is ax plus by equals c, which we have written here. And in order to write an equation for horizontal lines, we use this equation where we're going to make a equals 0, b equal 1, and c really can be any number. Alright? Okay, and that's essentially how we build this equation so that we're able to use it to write an equation for a horizontal line. So as an example here, underneath we have written 0x plus 1y equals 5. If I were to simplify this, the 0x would just turn into 0. 0 times anything is 0, so essentially I don't need that there. The 1y is the same as me just having y. I don't necessarily have to have the 1 in front of it. So really the simplified version of that equation is just y equals 5. Okay, and this is the equation to a horizontal line. If y equals 5, I will get a horizontal line, as you can see here highlighted. I get a horizontal line where on the y-axis where y is 5. Okay, now there is one definitely thing that we got to think about when we're talking about horizontal and vertical lines that a lot of people usually get mixed up. Normally when we think of like the horizontal direction, we think of the x because the x-axis is a horizontal line, and when we think of vertical lines, we think of the y-axis because our y-axis is a vertical line. But when we're actually writing the equations to horizontal lines, those are kind of switched around. Horizontal lines are equations where we have y equal to any number. The equation to a horizontal line is y equal to any number. Okay, it's essentially standard form with where a is equal to 0 and b is equal to 1 and c is any number, but really at the end we just get y equal to some number. And the way we graph that is we go to our graph, we look on the y-axis for the number that y is set equal to. In this case y equals 5, so I go to my y-axis, I look for 5, and I put a horizontal line through that. Now the reason why this is the line for that is because our equation says that y equals 5. It means that y can only equal 5. Y is not allowed to be any other number. And if I look at these points that are on this line, I can go ahead and zoom in on my line. I can choose any point on this line. I'm going to choose 3. I'm going to choose this point. Whoops. Sorry about that. I'm going to choose this point right here, which would be 2, 5. I'm going to choose this point all the way over here, which would be 9, 5. And I'm going to choose a point over here, which is -7, 5. If I look at this line, these points all have one thing in common, and that is that their y values are all 5. And that's because on this line, y is only equal to 5. Y cannot equal 6, y cannot equal 7. So that's how we get this horizontal line. We find all the points where y has to be 5 and we draw a line through them. Okay. So all horizontal lines will be like this. If I have, for example, really quick, y equals 3. Let me do it in a different color. The line of y equals, let's do a negative number, -2. I would go to -2 on my y-axis, which is right here, and I would go ahead and just draw a line, a horizontal line, through all those points. And that's how I graph y equals -2. So horizontal lines are really equations that just have y equal to some number. And vertical lines, in a similar way, are sort of, instead of using y, we actually use x. So now let's take a look at vertical lines. Vertical lines are lines that go just straight up and down. Here we have an example of the vertical line x equals 5. And kind of as we mentioned in the last example, where it's essentially standard form where a is 1, b is 0, and c can be any number. That's how you get a vertical line. Okay, and again we have the example where we're going to simplify this and we get x equals 5. Bottom line, any equation that's vertical line is going to be x equals to some number. Okay, and here I have the example of a line x equals 5. So similar to how we graph the horizontal line, in this case we just look at the x-axis. I find where 5 is, it's covered here by the red line, and we just draw a vertical line over that number, and that's how we graph a vertical line. Okay, so again, to give you another example, I could do the equation of x equals, let's do a negative value so that you have a negative and a positive. Let's do -4. So I look at the x-axis, I look for -4, which is right here, and I just draw a vertical line through that. And there's two vertical lines, one of them x equal to 5 in the red, x equals -4 in the green. Okay, and again, I can choose 3 points, kind of the same way why we prove this is true. For the y values, I can choose any 3 points, and in this case you'll see that all of them, this is 5, 1, this is 5, 9, and down here I have 5, -8. All these 3 points have one thing in common, and that is that their x values are all 5, which is why we call this line the x equals 5 line, because no matter what point I choose, all these points are going to have an x value that has to equal 5. Okay? So let's go ahead and let's continue this. Let's practice, and let's just go ahead and graph some vertical and horizontal lines. This first one says graph y equals -1. So usually the letter, here's how the steps that I take to graph these. First thing I do is I look at which letter they gave me. They gave me y. So that means I'm going to look at the y-axis. Okay? Hopefully you get into the habit of remembering that if you see y equals something, that is a horizontal line. So I'm going to look for the -1 on the y-axis, which is down here. And all I do is I make a point there if you want, and you can just draw a line going straight through that. Okay? And that's how we graph y equals -1. Now let's go ahead and let's look at another example. Graph the equation x equals -5. So again, I look at the letter that they give me. They give me the x, so that means I'm looking for the number that they give me on the x-axis. So -5, I'm looking for -5 on my x-axis. That would be right here. So my goal is to draw a line going through that value. So remember that x equals something will give you a vertical line. So this is going to be that line. Okay. Finally, let's look at one more that's a little bit more complex. We got graph the equation 6x equals 12. And we look at this one, it's kind of like, well, I haven't seen this before. I'm not familiar with this. The 6 normally isn't there. It's usually just x equals something. I have a feeling that I'm probably going to need to find the number on the x-axis, but I just don't know what to do. Well, if it's not looking like something that we're used to, let's see if we can change it into something that's more familiar. So basically, we want to isolate that x. We want to get x by itself. I have 6x equals 12. How can I get the 6 away from the x? Well, that is 6 times x. In order to get rid of it, I can divide by 6 on both sides. And I get x equals 12 divided by 6 is simply 2. And now I have an equation that's kind of, for me, more familiar. Now I know that, oh, I just need to find 2 on the x-axis, which is right here. And I need to draw a vertical line through that. And that's how we graph the equation. 6x equals 12. We change it into the equation x equals 2. And then we just find it on the x-axis. And remember, x will give you vertical lines. So hopefully now you feel that you can graph a vertical and horizontal line if they give you the equation. Now remember, the main misconception or mistake that people make when they are trying to graph something like this is that when they get an equation like y equals 2, which we just saw anything that has y equal to some number, that's going to be a horizontal line. Because we're so used to the y-axis being a vertical line, we tend to think that y equals something is going to be a vertical line as well. But it's backwards, okay? If you see y equal 2, that means you're going to look at the y-axis, you're going to look at 2 on there, and you're going to draw a horizontal line through that. If you see x equals 1, okay, or x equal any number, you know that that has to be a vertical line. And again, we get confused sometimes because we're so used to the x-axis, and that x-axis is a horizontal line, but you got to remember that when you're graphing vertical and horizontal lines, x is actually talking about the vertical lines that go through a certain point on the x-axis. Okay, so keep that in mind. I hope this video helped, and I hope you go on right now to graph some vertical and horizontal lines. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.